So, hello everyone. I'm Romit Kaware. I'm currently working on the sediment management in the tropical waters of Indo-Pacific. So, here we will be going to explore what is the critical challenge when we talk about sediment management, especially within the complex and the dynamic tropical waters of the Indo-Pacific. Basically, we have to look into what is the nuances uh, of the sediment related challenges. What are the technologies that are able to solve these very specific problems so that we can turn the tide from a reactive to a proactive approach. So when we talk about sediment management, if I want to just define it, it's nothing but handling the soil which comes down with the flow of water through our water body. So it may be silt, sand, or a mixture of them. We focus mostly on two aspects of sediment management. One is the sediment transport modeling, or the sediment transport, which deals with the sediment dynamics, the flow rate, what is the bed load, and all the associated phenomena of accretion and erosion. And the other is the sediment classification, which talks about the what kind of sediment, once the sediment is deposited, what are their types, what are the engineering characteristics, and how that affect the other related processes like dredging or the bearing capacity. However, today our approach in this management of sediment is mostly a local one. It is mostly tailored to any disaster, and it's not based on a predictive analysis. So what we are trying to do is having the predictive capability to develop proper sediment transport model or a sediment classification model. Now, but we need to understand why does it matter, especially when in the Indian context. The Indo-Pacific region, we have rapid unplanned urbanization. We have a lot of which encroaches on the natural floodplains also, and putting immense stresses on our drainage patterns, on the river systems, and on our water resources. Apart from that, the Indian Ocean region poses significant knowledge gaps regarding how the human interventions affect the sediment related processes, how the local sediment dynamics are behaving in the particular region due to the variation in temperature, due to climate change, due to various other anthropogenic activities like the shipping lanes, oil, and other resource extraction. One of the uh, uh, major you can see how the scale of sediment management is through this picture. As you can see, this is the Gulf of Khambat. So within a span of few months, you can see in April it's relatively clear, but it transforms into a very thick sediment layer through the influx of sediment from the Sabarmati, the Tapi, and the Mahi river. So we can see how large is the scale of managing sediments, which largely goes unmanaged and and mostly ignored. uh, Again, as my colleague talked about the unique tropical conditions which are there in the Indian Ocean region, we need to properly assess them. How does these intense monsoon systems lead to excessive sedimentation, the subsequent erosion, deforestation? How all these are affecting the influx of sediment? In fact, when we talk about the Ganga Brahmaputra system, it 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 is around the sediment influx is around 10% of the global sediment influx. So we have very unique conditions when we talk about just the sediment case. So these innovations that already exist in other regions of the world can't be directly translated into the Indian context. Now, if we go directly into what are the specific applications or challenges related to the seabed is highly uneven due to the ever-going sediment deposition, the redistribution, and this affects the navigation, resource extraction. Uh, we have the ecosystem management. When we talk about the route mapping for undersea cables, understanding the bathymetry, the evolving bathymetry is very much crucial. How the submarine routes are planned. When we have these polymetallic nodules which are found in the central Indian Ocean basin, this would also require technologies that would be able to extract these nodules from the seabed. Now, all of this require an extensive knowledge of the seabed. However, there are significant gaps in the bathymet data, how the sediment shift keeps on happening, how the uh, we have the underwater slopes, how they affect this overall stability of the seabed. Unfortunately, that a research gap exists in this particular region. Another crucial application of the sediment classification is within the strategic resource deployment. So when we talk about the shallow water warfare, we have to deploy the say any heavy machinery. We would have to make some structures such as bunkers or trenches in such shallow waters, and for that we require the understanding of the sediment bearing pressure, which is the maximum load that can be taken up by that layer of sediment. Uh, Again, so it has also leads to the enhanced mobility of the heavy structures, or if we have any temporary bridges or any amphibious operations, this sediment bearing pressure is very much crucial, not only in the defense applications, but when we talk about the other civilian infrastructure also. So if due to excessive sediment flow, there might be erosion, and that leads to a scouring uh, uh, of the infrastructure of various bridge abutments. Due to this, there would be foundational instability, thus leading to excessive settlements and lead to a collapse. Similarly, when we talk about the reservoirs, specifically in terms of earthen dams, the piping failures or the internal erosion is a very crucial is a very mammoth challenge that is currently faced due to this unmonitored sedimentation. When we talk about the watershed, this Central Water Commission study mentions that some of the Indian reservoirs face a sedimentation level rate of around 1%, which is greater than the global average of around 0.5%. Now, due to this, there is a storage capacity loss of up to 30% within the Indian reservoirs. Not only reduces the storage capacity, but also poses risk to the overall stability of the structure, leading to infrastructure damage, and also in terms of hydropower projects, it might lead to damage to the turbine blades and blocking of the dam outlets. Furthermore, the sediments also include a lot of nutrients or toxic metals, and also lead to an increased turbidity. This deteriorates the water quality, increasing the turbidity and also leading to sediment pollution. Now, apart from that, there is also entrapment of the sediment upstream due to the dams, so that there is a very restricted flow of sediment downstream. Now, this affects the habitat, the marine ecosystem, starving downstream rivers of sediment, which might be feeding nutrients to the uh, uh, marine ecosystem there. So, and the water quality which is deteriorated might also have effects on the human health. So challenges are wide ranging, right from the people to the economy to the nature. So what is the solution? So we are proposing the technological aspects of sediment transport modeling. If we can able to predict what kind of sediments are there, how the flow would look like. It would take inputs about the data, about the flow conditions, what are the type of sediment, the sediment characteristics, what is the topography, and then physics based equations would be are solved based on which are based on the FEM or the FDM methods. And then we could have a spatial distribution of the sediments, creation of a digital twin of a particular system is uh, uh, is a is a very is the potent solution for this. Now, once we have such kind of sediment data, this can be used to predict what are the excessive sedimentation hotspots. Our navigational channels are very much crucial, and excessive sedimentation might lead to a reduced draft. And for that, we would require frequent dredging. However, this frequent dredging would be costly, and it would have effects on the ecosystem as well. So should be proper prediction which may be able to identify what are the hotspots, over the flood seasons, so that we are able to forecast what is the sediment volume that needs to be dredged, thus improving our efficiency and also reducing the operational cost when it comes to dredging. But again, dredging is a short term solution for if we have to provide some alternative long term solutions of sediment routing, say cell traps. This data can be again crucial for long term planning and decision making. Again, when we talk about the ports, you can see in the animation how long term unchecked sedimentation can build up over years. Now this causes uh, uh, this causes damages again to the port structures due to excessive erosion and scouring. There is also environmental compliance that needs to be followed, as excessive sedimentation would lead to excessive turbidity. And once this sediment with the dead sediment, its engineering characteristics are found out, it can be again reused for the infrastructure work itself. So there is an reuse of the sediment, so a circular kind of a thing may be worked out. Another tool is the remote sensing, where we take satellite imagery to track sediment across large temporal and spatial scales. And then through this satellite or the SAR images, we use some mathematical or machine learning models like the support vector machine or an artificial neural network, and then extract some features. These features are then translated to the parameters which talk about the sediment bed load capacity, so that we are able to estimate what kind of sediment would be flowing through particular time of the year. Uh, Apart from that, we are also working on a undersea cable mapping. So we have found out this capability mapping in order to see which nations have the laying capability, the repair capability, and the destruction capability of the undersea cables. And also we are able to identify what are the earthquake fault lines, the marine protected areas, the coral reefs that might uh, 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 that needs to be properly taken in care whenever new submarine cable route is to be planned. Now, another aspect that we are working on is urban flooding. As my colleague also talked about, that urban flooding is one of the major challenges. 2015 Chennai flood caused around 15,000 crore plus economic losses, and it is a recurring event. So what we are proposing is to have a digital twin for our drains. We could have the total drainage system simulated, and with the proper input data for rainfall, the bed loads, and the network maps and the sediment types, we could model the flow of water, the peak intensity of the floods with and without the sediment, so that we can understand was the how much is the variation in the response with the inclusion of the sediments. Now this would be able to generate hotspot maps, predict the flood levels, and then come up with mitigation strategies, so we can have long term sediment solutions. In the warm waters of the Indian Ocean region, we have another challenge of biofouling. So these invasive species conquer the submerged structures, and they add to the drag, they increase the fuel consumption, and also maintenance cost increase. There are some toxic anti-fouling paints that have been developed, but what we are looking into is the acoustic anti-fouling techniques, which is a more eco-friendly and a more eco-friendly solution. So it would basically look into a simulation based a model which would take in what is the hull geometry for various ships, what are the specific regional data including the environmental, hydrological, and this biological data, and then based on that, using the finite element analysis and some prediction models, we would be able to see what would be the biofilm growth, what would be the thresholds, and then finally able to see the effectiveness maps of the transducers, how those transducers can be placed within the hull, and then optimize that configuration to have the maximum of anti-fouling characteristic. Now, all of the technology needs to be validated across the ground realities. One such study which was carried out was on the Khadakwasla field study, where acoustic survey of the Khadakwasla lake was carried out using this acoustic sonar sub-bottom profilers, and based on that, the raw acoustic data was gathered. Then data processing algorithms and other mathematical models they were basically used in order to filter the noise from the raw data, and then translate that information into parameters that can be correlated to the sediment patterns, here being the reflection coefficient. And from the models and the sediment samples, we were able to see that the uh, mostly Khadakwasla was from in the domain of sandy silt. A similar exercise is being carried out in the Ujjaini reservoir, where we have carried out the quantitative and the qualitative assessment of the sediment, along with the remote sensing and sediment transport modeling of the sediment flow that would come in from the various sources, so that we could have an overall impact assessment of the sediment influx. So with this, I'll end the discussion here. Thank you, everyone.